I'm going to be presenting some work together with Emilie Vestergaard, who's a really excellent PhD student at the University of Copenhagen. I'll be talking about the adoption of ChatGPT. So I thought, before diving into this specific research paper, I thought I would just do a raise of hands. Within this week, how many of you have used either ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, or any other AI chatbot? Okay, so it's like 90% or something like that. Anyone who's not using these tools? Okay, that's quite incredible. You're probably also a selected sample. You're willing to show up. Maybe it's just a great lunch or something like that, but you're also willing to sit in for an hour listening to me talking about ChatGPT. So the idea of this project is to go beyond selected samples and really survey a large and representative set of workers in a broad set of occupations to really understanding the adoption of ChatGPT. So this is a paper that has been out for some time. We're actually doing follow-up work now, following workers and firms in the data, seeing whether these adoption decisions actually matter for their economic outcomes. So if we have time at the end, give you a little bit of a taste of what we're doing there. Okay, so let's just dive right into it. So ChatGPT really marks the era of generative AI, where several high-skilled occupations may be disrupted. So what we ask in this project is 3 questions. So first, who has adopted ChatGPT? How do workers anticipate this technology to impact their jobs? And finally, why do some workers use the tool and others not? So to answer these questions, we conducted a large-scale survey of 11 exposed occupations. And then we took these survey answers and linked them to very detailed administrative data on the earnings, the background, the social demographics of these workers, allowing us to get a really rich and nuanced picture of who are really embracing these frontier technologies. And then we're going to be interested in particular in whether workers' beliefs about this technology, whether you're really excited and think there's great potential, is driving the adoption decision, and whether there are some barriers that some workers may face in adopting the technology. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. So this is a project that we did in collaboration with Statistics Denmark. We invited 100,000 workers from 11 exposed occupations. I'll tell you about them in a little bit. So why Denmark? Why this specific setting? It really offers 2 key advantages for this study. The first key advantage is that Statistics Denmark has very detailed information about the occupations that different workers are in. So we can target these occupations to workers, or these invitations to workers in occupations such as software development, journalism, marketing, and so forth, people that are writing text where we think these large language models are actually useful. The second key advantage is that every Dane has a digital mailbox that the government uses to send tax records and other important documents. So Statistics Denmark has the authority to send out survey invitations through this digital post, which is really key to reach a large and representative sample, so we don't get the selection issue that it's only people who are actually interested in ChatGPT that show up and respond to the survey. Okay, so we got 18,000 complete and valid responses and a representative sample, and we do a lot of work ensuring that this is really high quality data. There are many variables that are both measured in the survey as well as in the register, and we show that these line up. So this is, I think, a really rich and very exciting opportunity to understand the adoption of ChatGPT. Okay, so this is the first fact that emerges from these data, is that this survey was conducted at the end of 2023, so around a year after the launch. And already then, it was pervasive in the exposed occupations. So half of workers had used ChatGPT. Adoption rates vary across occupations, and we'll get into why they vary across occupations. So you see that marketing professionals, software developers, journalists, so people who are writing text as a core task, or people who are working in tech, are the occupations that have used and really embracing these technologies the most. At the bottom of this rank, workers such as accountants and financial advisors are using ChatGPT much less, and there might be good reasons for why that is the case. We'll get into it. So it's not every worker who've ever used ChatGPT. So I asked you, have you used ChatGPT in the last week? And you all had, but that's not the case for everyone who have ever tried it. So around 40% are still actively using this technology, and then even fewer are like super users that are actually paying for the. So yeah, maybe another raise of hands. How many are actually paying for a plus subscription for ChatGPT? Okay, also like more than a half or something like that. So in the broader population, at least among this 11 set of exposed occupations, it's more like 7%. Who are paying for this. Okay. The second thing and a key contribution of this project is that we can then take this survey data, link it back to the admin registers, where we know a bunch about workers. So we know the age, we know the experience in their occupations, we know the earnings from the tax records, we know the wealth and the gender. So so what does this table show? In the first 5 columns, it's just univariate correlations within an occupation. So we're comparing, for example, 2 paralegals, and then we're asking whether younger workers are more likely to adopt ChatGPT. And then in the last 2 columns here, we just do a multivariate regression, like throwing all the characteristics in there and seeing in a horse race what really is the most important predictor. The last thing we can do here in the column is that we can even compare workers in the same workplace who are handling the same tasks. So now we're comparing 2 paralegals working for the same legal firm, handling the same legal task, and then we ask whether these characteristics really matter for the adoption of ChatGPT. And what this table shows, and I'll walk you through it, is that there are really quite large and systematic differences in who have embraced this frontier technology. So the first 2 rows, that it is younger and less experienced workers who have adopted this tool. So this makes sense from what we know about who are really benefiting the most. So there's good evidence from RCT showing that it really levels the playing field within occupations. So those that are, if you just started out as a customer support agent or just starting to learn a programming languages, then you have a lot to learn and a lot to gain by having assistance from this tool. And we see that showing up in the data in the sense that younger, less experienced workers have adopted this tool much faster. The second finding, which is surprising, and is that despite the fact that these adopters are younger, they actually earned more already before ChatGPT was even invented. So there was this hope initially that because ChatGPT can level the playing field and really help less expert workers, less experienced workers, then it could also mitigate income inequality within occupations. So we don't see that showing up in the adoption data. Quite the opposite, it's actually workers who already earned more who are now jumping into this new tool. The final thing, which was a really big surprise for me, is that there's a huge gender gap in the adoption of ChatGPT. And this is within occupations. So we're comparing 2 software developers. Even we can compare them working for the same firm. So just the raw gap here for use at work. So it's really not someone who's just like playing around with it at home as someone who's actually using it in the workplace, there's a 16 percentage point gap between the use of male versus women in the same occupations. And this gap shrinks once we compare co-workers, but still around 3/4 of the total gap remains even when we compare this very narrow category of workers. Okay. So this gender gap in the adoption of ChatGPT, it exists for all adoption measures. Actually, if you go to more intense measures, such as whether you're using it for core tasks in your occupation, the relative importance of gender only increases. And it's pervasive across all of our 11 occupations. This seems to be a very general phenomena that have played out, and I'll try to dig into why that is the case, but I think there's still a lot of open questions. Okay. So this second thing we're interested in this survey is to understanding how do workers believe this technology to impact their jobs. And the first finding is that workers see a substantial potential in this tool. So the average worker in these 11 exposed occupations say that ChatGPT can halve their working times in 1/3 of the job task. So that's just an astounding number. It really shows that at least if you ask an average worker, they do confirm that there's something about these tools and it's not all hype. Second, workers say that these time savings from ChatGPT are larger for workers who have less expertise. So they really do understand how this tool works, that it mainly works by helping less expert workers. And then thirdly, around 40% of the workers who say they can save time with ChatGPT say they will not do more of the tasks. So that's also a quite important finding, because that's really the engine of economic growth. Is we think that technology can make workers more productive. It allows them to expand output, either providing their services at a lower cost or higher quality. But still 40% say that they will not follow that path, at least in the short run. So this is especially the case actually in education. So around 70% of teachers say that they will not do more work, even if it can save time. And I think it makes sense if you really think about it. I could maybe use ChatGPT to grade essays, but I'll not grade more essays in the short run just because I have this assistance. So that really shows the difference between short run impacts of a technology versus longer run, where we might start reorganizing how we're even teaching courses and how we're grading and assigning essays. But in the very short run, of course, the educational sector is just starting to wake up and reorganize based on this new reality. The fourth finding is that workers are very uncertain about these beliefs and the capabilities of ChatGPT. And I think it makes sense. This technology is really evolving quite rapidly. New versions of GPT are being launched and new use cases are being found. So I think there's a general consensus here that GPT falls into the class of so-called general purpose technologies, which are tools that can be used in a wide array of tasks and occupations. And we see that showing up also that across these 11 occupations, there are really a wide usage. Okay. So the last thing we want to understand in this survey is how these very optimistic beliefs about ChatGPT maps into the actual use. And if there's not a clear link between beliefs and actual use, what is holding workers back from taking advantage of these potential time savings? So let me walk you through what this chart shows you. So first, the chart on your right and your left. So let's start with the chart on the left. Here we're focusing on workers who have ever used ChatGPT. It could be at home, it could be at work. They've had some experience with the tool. Then in the inner circle, the chart here is all their job tasks, and then the share of these job tasks where they say there's large time savings from this tool. Where large time saving is a quite high bar. It's that you can halve your working time in the task at equal quality. And what this equal quality means is that if someone reviewed the work, they would not be able to assess whether it had been completed with or without help from ChatGPT. Then in the outer circle here, or the outer ring, is the share of these tasks that where workers are actually intending to use this tool. Okay. And then you can do the same thing with workers who have never used the tool. So what are the insights that emerges from this? The first is that people are quite optimistic across the board. Even workers that have not even used the tool say that there's great potential here, which is interesting in its own right. Is there's a general feeling that there's something big here, even for workers who are not even using the tool. The second finding is that workers who have not tried the tool at this point are not looking to start using it. So sometimes in a technology adoption, in the technology adoption literature, we think about S-curves, where there's some early adopters, but then there's a mass of adopters that embraces the tool, and then the S then attenuates, and it seems that we're beyond that inflection point. So either you have already jumped into the tool and started using it, or you're not going to start using it anytime soon. That's clearly what we see, even in the 30% of job tasks where these never users say they could save time. Around 97% are saying they're not intending to use it. And of course, we'll try to dig into why that is the case. That seems like a paradox. But then even among the workers who have tried the tool, so they know what they're talking about, they say it could halve their working times in around a third of the task. In these tasks, there is around 63 or 64% who say they're not intending to use the tool. So it seems that there's just a substantial potential in this tool to boost productivity that is not being realized right now. So what is holding workers back? So here we're zooming in on this gray segment here and asking, why are workers not using ChatGPT if they say it could help them save time? And then again, we are breaking up the answers based on whether they have ever used or never used the tool. So what does this graph show you? The first finding is that the main barrier to adopting ChatGPT relates to firm policies, something that firms at least have partially under their control. In particular, more among the workers who have ever used the tool, say it could save them time, but are not intending to use it. Around 40% are not allowed to use the tool by their employers. So that's a quite valid reason for not starting to use it if you're not allowed. And I'm sure at least I would, if I were in your seat, I would be unsure whether it's actually encouraged or allowed to use in your coursework. And there's a lot of employers in Denmark as well as in the US that just shut down the use of ChatGPT. The second most important, or actually the first most important for people who have never used ChatGPT, is that there's a lot of workers who say they need some training to start using the tool. So that's probably not relevant for you that are sitting in this in this classroom. Who are the people who are saying they need training? It's mostly older workers. And maybe surprisingly, also female workers say that they're more likely to say they need some training to start using the tool. And that's the reason why they're not adopting as fast as their male counterparts. So what's not driving these barriers? We also ask about more existential reasons for not using ChatGPT. For example, you could fear that you might be replaced and redundant in your job, or fear that you might become dependent of this technology. And less than 10% say that that's the reason for why they're not using the technology. So it's more like very practical reasons for why workers are not using it, and not these more abstract and existential reasons. Okay, so I actually have plenty of time. So let me walk you through what we're working on now, which is a follow-on work. There was this initial paper documenting the adoption of ChatGPT. But we really only care about these adoptions if they matter for economic outcomes. Should we really be worried of the fact that women are much less likely to use the tool? That's only really the case for, that is only really worrisome if they're now falling behind in the labor market, not earning as much because of they're losing out on these potential gains. Okay. So what we ask here is that kind of AI in the wild, is it like one thing is that workers say it could potentially improve their productivity? Do we actually see that showing up in their outcomes? Okay, so maybe also here, because I had really uncertain priors about this going into this, and I'll list some reason for or against, but just a raise of hand, how many of you think that ChatGPT has improved the earnings of workers? And let's just set a threshold of like at least 5%. So it's not just like, yeah, so at least 5%. Okay, so like maybe like 20%. Who think it has not have any impact? Okay, many more. Interesting. Anyone think that it actually has decreased the earnings of workers? Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so here are like 3 good reasons why you might think that ChatGPT has boosted earnings, and 3 reasons why you might think that it has not yet had an impact. So it has already been documented in our papers and in other work also in the US. This was the fastest technology to diffuse ever. So workers are really embracing this technology. We see that workers see a substantial productivity potential, and maybe more importantly, there's been several RCTs now showing that if you give access to, for example, programmers or text writers to this tool, it really increased productivity. So there's real potential gains here. So why might you be skeptical? There's also really interesting RCTs showing that it really matters which task you're treating for whether you're better off or worse off by having access to this tool. So there was a really clever RCTs where they took a bunch of consultants from BCG, and then they varied which task that they were assigned to. And in one of them, the task was a spreadsheet calculation where you had to do some calculation that at that point ChatGPT was not very good at. And they actually showed that these consultants performed worse by having access to this tool. On the other hand, if it's something like copy editing or something the plain vanilla ChatGPT task, they gain. So there's something they call the jagged frontier of gains and losses from this tool. The second reason why you might be skeptical is that in the short run, we've seen very limited kind of firm-based adoption of this tool. It's really interesting that we've had this important technology that are being used a lot, but it's really coming from the bottom up. And most firms are either passive or regressive. I think most CEOs don't even know which workers are using this tool. And the way many firms have responded to this is just shutting it down. And we'll return to this. So why does this matter? Because if firms have not reorganized their production around this tool, there's limited ability to really expand your output and earn more. So for example, with the teachers, if they're still just the same number of essays and classes to be taught, in the short run, there's not really a potential to increase your earnings potential. And then I think the last skepticism you may have is that maybe the male workers are just playing around with this because this is the new digital toy, a new gadget. Is it really that productive in their work? Okay, so why is it challenging to answer this question? Is that we've already shown that it's not random who's using ChatGPT. There's really strong selection into the use of tools. We've seen that it's workers who are more able in the sense that they earned more already before the arrival of ChatGPT. And we see them selecting into this tool also based on their cost and benefits from this. We see that it's the less experienced workers who have the most gain from this technology also jumping into it. Okay, so what is our strategy to address this identification challenge? So first, in terms of measurement, we now have data not just before the arrival of ChatGPT, but also after the arrival of ChatGPT, so we can actually see the labor market outcomes of these workers who have adopted this tool. And then the strategy will be, first, we will compare adopters versus non-adopters before and after the arrival of ChatGPT. And then to get at this selection issue, we will exploit these employer restrictions. So that creates, in some sense, a natural experiment. Now we have two comparable paralegals, for example. They're working for two different legal firms. In one of the legal firms, they're allowed to use ChatGPT. In the other legal firm, they're restricted in their use. And that creates a natural experiment for why the workers in one of the firms are using it and the others not, that are unrelated to their underlying interest in this technology. Okay, so which are the firms that have restricted the use of ChatGPT? So you may already have guessed it because we saw it already. It's kind of the mirror image or the flip image of who's using it a lot. Or who's using it a little are those that are restricted a lot. So for example, financial advisors, legal professional, accountants. So what are these workers doing? These are workers that are either handling very confidential data and information, or where being correct is kind of a core reason why you would hire a lawyer, is you want to meet legal standards. And we see that showing up in the sense that financial advisors, they're handling your bank statements, that you don't want them to be uploaded to ChatGPT because OpenAI is sitting on the other end and just read your finances. On the other hand, workers that are not handling, in that sense, secret information or confidential information are much less likely to facing these restrictions. Another interesting pattern is that within occupations, it's the larger firms that are more likely to have restricted the use of the tool. So that was surprising for me, because usually it's the larger and more productive firms that are faster to adopt new technology. We think that's a reason why they're larger to begin with and more productive to begin with, is that they're using these frontier tools. But with ChatGPT, we saw the exact opposite. So why is that the case? My best guess right now is that they had more to lose from this technology. If you're a really successful legal firm or bank or something like that, you don't want a scandal, or you don't want to jeopardize your credential, and then you would rather just shut it down. Okay. So here we're characterizing workers who are either restricted versus non-restricted, and we are looking in panel A of their adoption, their own characteristics, as well as the firm characteristics. So the first panel here just shows that workers who were in firms that were restricting the use were also using ChatGPT less. So in econometrics, we would say this is the first stage, in some sense, that these employer restrictions really mattered for the treatment variable after the adoption of ChatGPT. The second panel here shows that on average, workers who were in either the restricting or non-restricted firms were somewhat comparable in the sense that they were a little bit younger, had similar experience, they were earning a little bit more. That's coming from the fact that they were at these larger firms. So workers that are working in larger firms, that a well-documented fact, they earn a little bit more. But now they were more likely also to be restricted in their use of ChatGPT. And we see this clearly here in the last panel. Workers who are this should be flipped. It should be restricted minus non-restricted, sorry. Workers that are restricted are more likely to come or be employed in firms that are larger and more productive. Okay. So then the identification strategy, first we'll just start with something that is very simple, which is we'll take workers who either have or have not used ChatGPT in their work. And then we'll ask whether they earn more in the labor market. And the dashed line here shows the November 2020, which was the launch date of GPT-3, so ChatGPT. And here it's a simple difference in means in their earnings. So it's in log points, so you can interpret this as after ChatGPT, workers who have adopted this tool earned around 6 to 7% more. And then we make sure that this is not driven by their occupation or age, experience, gender. We're really comparing within marketing professionals. It's the same age, same gender, same experience. There's this 7% earnings gap. So this could suggest that there's actually something here, that ChatGPT has actually boosted earnings for workers. But now the strength of this admin data is we have the panel dimension. So we can follow these workers back in time and see, well, how did they perform before even ChatGPT was invented? And then you get this picture. So workers who are using ChatGPT now, they're earning more, but they have always earned more. They're just the high ability workers who are jumping into new technologies, but they're just more capable already from the get-go. So it really shows the importance of selection here, is that yes, they're earning more, but it's all coming from selection, it seems. So that means this was just a difference in means, something we often do when we have these panel data sets is we do a difference in difference, which is just to index the difference relative to some base period, and natural base period is the time of the launch. And then we see that relative to the time of the launch, workers who are using this tool are really not earning more in the labor market. So yeah, I was again, I didn't have strong bias about this, but it seems that we can reject with 95% confidence that workers are earning more than 5%. So the majority of you had already guessed the result from this from this plot, and I congratulate you with that. But I think the literature really didn't know before we had this data. Okay, we can do the same thing where instead of relying on just comparing workers who have adopted versus non-adopted, we can look at workers who are restricted versus non-restricted. We think that that's a more exogenous reason for not using ChatGPT in the work. And again, the same picture emerges. Now you have the reverse picture because workers who are non-restricted, they come from these smaller, less productive firms. So they're earning a little bit less already before the arrival of ChatGPT. But again, doing the diff and diff, we can really not rule out that this technology has had any impact in terms of worker earnings. Okay, so I'll conclude with some time left. So I'm really excited if any of you have some questions. Let me just give you kind of the 4 key takeaways. Is that first of all, this is still like early times. and everything I've showed you is short-run impacts, and I think there's really important actions that are being made right now. But we can see in the short run, ChatGPT is pervasive, but there's still substantial inequalities in the use of this tool. In particular, women, if you just look at if you ever use this tool, they're 20 percentage points less likely to have used the tool compared to men in the same occupations. So workers see a substantial potential in this tool, but are often hindered by employer restrictions or the need for training. So I think looking ahead, this really puts firms in a very important position to facilitate both the further adoption of this tool, but also the economic implications of this. Because we see that without firms stepping in and facilitating adoption, we both see that there's a substantial share of workers who are not using it, and we're not really seeing it show up in the outcomes either. Even those that are using it are right now not earning more from the use of this tool. So yeah, I think the final finding is that it has had, it seems, limited impact on worker earnings. It's really driven by the selection effect and not causation. Okay, so thank you so much.